Hi guys, here we go into Discipleship Lesson 17, Building Authentic Community. I have experienced the most authentic community while being a part of City Church. Growing up in church, I was always in small groups with my family and I loved it. And I also recognized too that my mom put a lot of effort into keeping us involved with the Sunday mornings and the choir practices and the different camps that they offered every single year I went to church camp. However, we lived like 30 minutes from where our church was, and I did not have a lot of authentic friendships with the youth group friends. I saw them once a week on Sunday, but it was authentic there. But and maybe because it was just I was a teenager that was my experience in the churches I grew up in. I recognized a really crazy difference when I went to City Church as an 18, 19-year-old, and it probably has a lot to do with the fact that I was turning into an adult. All of a sudden, my world and my life became who I wanted them to be. I could choose who I wanted my closest friends to be, and I wanted them to be people who had the same like-minded moral compass, that going after the same goals and having the same identity in Christ that I was interested in. And the authentic relationships that I found in City Church were life-changing. I met my husband at City Church. My best friends were in my wedding from City Church. And I know that my case is not always, everyone's story is different. However, I have had the most beautiful, authentic friendships and relationships. Excuse me, that little fly. I've had beautiful, authentic community in our church. So, Roman numeral 1, what is meant by building authentic community? And there's A, B, and C. There's building, it's authentic, and it's community. So taking those three words apart, looking at some different scriptures, it says the word building implies that we can be social architects. I like those two words. You can be a social architect for how you want your life, your friends, your circle, your village to look like. You can be a social architect. And if you look around and be like, I don't like that friendship, I don't feel good about that area or those, friends from my past that maybe are a bad influence, or maybe there's just too much negativity, or it's toxic is the word that we use a lot nowadays. You can be a social architect and rebuild, restructure, repair. I like all those words. Reconstruct what you want your social atmosphere and your authentic community in the church to look like. So, despite the superficial nature of our society, it is possible for us to create something that reflects a kingdom community. A kingdom community. It's just another world out there, and the church is charged with and encouraged to look different and to be different. We can create our own culture, and God can help us build it. Letter B is authentic. In Acts chapter 2, they worshiped together at the temple each day. They met in homes. They had great joy, generosity. I love this verse. The word authentic implies that what we are after is genuine. Absolutely, it's genuine. There's sincerity and there's a real thing. In today's generation, we can see through fakeness, right? It's pretty easy to tell. People can see when we do things with wrong motives. Today's generation generally is looking for authentic community when they first ask questions about the truth. Letter C is the word community, but if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we can have fellowship with one another, according to 1 John. The word community is from a biblical perspective. It means fellowship, participation, sharing, contributing, generosity. So building a biblical community, it is an environment where we're going to love God completely, love ourselves correctly, and love others compassionately. That is beautiful. This whole page is just beautiful in its notes. Let's love God completely. Let's love others correctly. And let's love ourselves correctly. And let's love others compassionately. I'm going to use that. It's so good. Roman numeral 2, why do we need to build authentic community? We need to focus on building authentic community for several reasons. Let's talk about it. Letter A. In the notes, it says, because God himself is relational and we are to be like him. God himself is relational. You are never more like God than when you are living in a relationship with God's people. Letter B, because Jesus desires authentic community among his followers. Whatever God's priorities are, they need to be our priority too. So if Jesus prayed, Father, that they may be one, Jesus prayed those words, I pray that my friends are one. I pray that they stay in unity. If that was God's heart for us, then that should be our heart, to be in unity with authentic community with our church and our friends and our Christian other believers. Letter C, because authentic community among Christ followers testifies of authenticity. Being a good testimony, walking the walk and talking the talk and living a life that's going to honor God and be a good example and be a light in a darkened world. Letter D, because authentic community is necessary for effective ministry. We are all full-time ministers of the gospel. You guys, you're all in ministry, right? We talked about this before. We are in full-time ministry, whether you get paid from the church or not. You are called to be in ministry, and authentic community is necessary for ministry to be effective. Ministry is reaching other people with the gospel, ministering to the needs in the community. And we're most effective when we're in good relationship, authentic relationships, where we know, care, and love people that are doing life alongside us. Okay, letter E, because authentic community is the context for making disciples. And this class is called Discipleship. And we are here to help others be discipled in the ministry, in the Word of God, and to also make sure that we're duplicating ourselves in others. John Wesley developed a simple plan for maturing and equipping the saints. This is cool. Wesley said the church changes the world not by making converts, but by making disciples. Meaning, we're going to change the world when we live differently and we authentically create a social environment where there is love and forgiveness, generosity and joy, a sharing, a fellowshipping, a rejoicing together, supporting one another through the hardships of life. That's what God wanted us to do. Letter F, because the church is God's agent to minister to the lonely and the hurting. A father to the fatherless, God sets the lonely in families. We are to be a part of each other. And those that want to go off and do their life alone, I think it's going to get hard and lonely and they're going to come back. That's what I always pray, that they're going to want to be a part of the family of God. The opposite of community is alienation, and that's the syndrome by which every individual feels isolated. You guys, we live in a culture, in a world that has just been forced to isolate and forced to quarantine, and it was detrimental to the mental health of the entire country. Isolation is so unhealthy. Alienation from other people, it gets people weird. Like when you find a hermit that's been living alone for 40 years, are they normal? Do they know how to socialize and talk? No, there's normally some mental illness there as well. And the mental health of the church is at stake if we cannot create a community that's authentic and loving and kind and supportive and wanting to be together, friendships. Letter G, because Christianity has a holistic theology. If someone says, I love God and hates his brother, then he's a liar. You can't love God and then go and hate your brother. Okay, so number one, this means that our love for God is going to translate into love for other people. If we love God, which we all say we do, then we've got to be able to say we love people too. Number two, this means that we can recognize our faithfulness in the natural, and the material realms qualify us for true spiritual riches. We are qualified to have true spiritual riches. I love it. Letter H, because authentic community is what? What is authentic community? Authentic community is given to us by the early church. The authentic community is the model. That's your blank. Sorry, didn't give you the blank. I read it without the blank. Sorry, guys. Because authentic community is the model given to us by the early church. Whatever they did in Acts chapter 2, we're trying to duplicate it. We're trying to make it happen for our own lives too. And if they gave us that model, then let us go out and try to make it happen in the same way. They continued steadfastly in doctrine and fellowship and breaking of bread, and the signs and wonders followed. They shared and divided everything amongst them, and everyone had everything that they needed. That would be beautiful, right? We can live that way too. Authentic community. Roman numeral 3. What are the symptoms of not being in an authentic community? You ready for the symptoms? Oh, they're kind of ugly, guys. Ready for this? I don't like the negative parts of our notes, but we got to do it. A lack of authentic community results in isolation. The blank is isolation. People who cannot make emotional attachments live in a state of perpetual hunger. Hungering for relationship. They have a crying need that cannot be met. Ouch. Letter B, lack of authentic community results in depression. Just noted that about the quarantine. Sadness, inactivity, difficulty with thinking and concentration. It's out of a lack of friendship. Letter C, a lack of authentic community results in feelings of meaningless. Feelings of meaningless. Meaningless is letter C. People confuse their feelings of meaningless when they do not have a purpose, with not having a purpose. They are desperately trying to find meaning in some activity or ministry. They want to be active and do something, but they still got to connect and have conversation, a vulnerability that opens up with other people. That's a beautiful part of what it means to be an authentic community. Letter D, lack of authentic community results in feelings of guilt. Isolated people who fail to bond tend to think of themselves as being bad because of their failure in relationships. The more they allow themselves to think this way, the more unlovable they become. Letter E, lack of authentic community results in addiction. Addiction. Isolated people can begin to turn to others for comfort that give them a sense of meaning or comfort without relationship to others. Addiction is so unhealthy, guys. Ultimately, these things do not bring lasting satisfaction. The social media has pros and cons. One of the worst things about social media is the superficial, fake friendship feeling you get. Like as if everyone knows you and you're known by everyone, but you haven't talked to anyone. And they only know the portions of yourself that you want to show them or give them. True vulnerability and authentic community is someone that honestly, what you see face to face, it matters. It matters hearing someone's voice on the other end of the line, not just texting. Yes, texting and social media messaging, it's a part of being in an authentic community. It's a part, it's not the full picture. Screens cannot replace face-to-face interaction. We can see that and we know that because we've all been online forever, right? And there is a difference that I've noticed even from my children learning from a screen than when they're learning from a teacher in person. An interaction that happens back and forth is an authentic community that can breed thoughts. And if I was talking to you and you were talking back to me, I bet you this conversation and this lesson could go in a different direction. And it could evolve and it could grow and it can be beautiful. And authentic community needs that kind of dialoguing back and forth. And screens so often make it a one-sided conversation. And yes, there can be part of us that feels connected, but it doesn't go both ways. Not as healthy as it could be when we're in face-to-face community. Small group time, sitting in a circle. Addiction in letter E is a big deal when we think about sexual addiction. People that are hungry and wanting to be loved, and they just turn to what they can find on their laptops and online. And the pornography industry is so out of control, and it is so toxic, and it warps the brain. And it is just the addiction and the addictive tendency that it brings to people, that they can feel loved for a moment, or they can feel that pleasure and that intimacy with someone or something for a little moment in time, might give them that momentary brief satisfaction, but it's going to lack in the long term and we drive them towards other forms of addiction with drugs and alcohol and lead them deeper into depression, anxiety, and isolation. Negative spiraling downward, where authentic community can bring accountability and healing and can bring fullness into your life. We need it. We need it especially more than ever after COVID, right? Roman numeral 4, what is the solution to a lack of authentic community? Tell us, what is the solution to the lack of authentic community? If we are to get into a place of authentic community, we must do 3 things. 3 things. Letter A, we must personally commit to building deep relationships. We must personally commit to building deep relationships. Let's be personally committed to building them. Letter B, we must embrace a biblical view of church life. Wow, there's a whole little chunk here about church life. I want you to push pause on me, and I want you to read through your notes, starting with the church is meant to be a family. Go ahead, you guys. I don't need to speak this at you. I need you to take some moments to read this in your notes. It's so good. The church is meant to be a family. Push pause on me. Read all the way through to letter C. Okay, so now you are on letter C. That's a really good. We embrace a biblical view of church life, right? You got that? Doesn't that feel good? Letter C, we must overcome the barriers to authentic community. Overcome the barriers, whatever is in your path. Time, too busy at work. I feel like it's so sad and I've been there, you guys, too, where I've had the necessity to work so much to pay for the lifestyle that I'm trying to create, to pay the bills, to pay sometimes really unfair bills, the speeding ticket that I probably deserved, or what about the medical bills that were not my fault at all, and I have to work through the weekend to just try to catch up. I've been there, I understand, but then the lack of authentic community when we can't meet together on a Sunday, it's hitting home. We need that more than ever. Roman numeral 5. What are some of the barriers to authentic community? There's no blanks on these, but I want to just go through them real quick. Letter A, past experiences can negatively affect our current beliefs about relationships. And I would say on that one, start the forgiveness process. Forgive, move forward, and trust again. Letter B, our self-concept can be a barrier to building authentic community. If you feel superior to those around you, or if you feel inferior to those around you, you're going to have a hard time connecting. Being a place of humility and also being brave. If you revert to more the shy side and being, social anxiety is like a real deal to you, we speak no fear, and we speak a spirit of just bravery to move forward with us in friendship. And also, you're not too good for us, guys. You're not too good. God wants us to walk in humility at all times. Okay, letter C, the stereotypes we have of certain groups can be a barrier to authentic community. If there's a stereotype that you have given into, it could be, you guys, the word is a prejudice. If there's a prejudice towards specific people, age groups, professions, are there cultural barriers that you are currently facing? If you only want to hang out with this certain type of person, you might need to get over that. You might need to really do some soul searching and recognize, hey, authentic community lives and breathes in the City Church, and I want to be a part of that. Okay, letter D, fear can be a barrier to building authentic community. Fear is real, but the Bible has told us over and over again to not be afraid, to be of good courage. We are not to walk in fear. Don't be timid, but that we are to encourage each other. Those that may be standing afar back, to not push them forward that they fall, but hold their hand, and so that they don't lag behind, but that they can stay up and that they can feel the comfort. Just today in one of the dance classes I was teaching, a little girl said, I'm shy. And she so wanted to dance, but she could not even get up out of her little spot on the floor. And I had to go all the way over there, all the way. I mean, like, all the kids in the room were just dancing and jumping and spinning, and I went all the way around the kids, and I just knelt down next to her, not to make a big scene. I was like, hey, I'll stand next to you and I'll dance with you, to this 5-year-old little girl. And I just danced right next to her to the Frozen music that was on, and she just let go, and all she needed was a friend to stand by her. If you recognize someone that keeps saying no, they don't want to come to church, or no, they don't want to go to that event, or they are holding back from really being a part of your authentic community, it could be fear that's holding them back, and they just need one person to say, hey, I'm just going to stand next to you and dance with you a little bit until you feel more comfortable. Okay, so there are many fears that can stand in our way. Letter number 1, fear of rejection. 2, fear of the unknown. 3, the fear of being out of control. And 4, the fear of being found out. Wow. Those 4 types of fear. All of us could relate to one of them probably at some time in our life. And it's hard to think that some people are crippled by these types of fear, but it's very true. This is a beautiful quote from C.S. Lewis. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything in your heart will certainly be wronged and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even to an animal. Wrap it carefully around hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, aimless, it will change. It will not be unbroken. Instead, it will become unbreakable, impenetrable, and irredeemable. How sad to live a life where you're so boxed in that dark coffin casket that no one could penetrate. And how much more beautiful to take the risk of being vulnerable, to love, to let someone in, to have a conversation, to break out of that fear. So if that's you, experiencing one of those types of fear of being into authentic community, let that quote from C.S. Lewis just hit home and allow you to have a fresh perspective of how beautiful it can be to love. Other barriers that we can work on overcoming authentic community is letter E, poor interpersonal skills can be a barrier. If you don't know how to talk to people, it can be hard. So let's practice. Practice having the conversation. Letter F, a lack of trust can be a barrier if in authentic community. Are people trustworthy until they prove themselves, or trustworthy? One more time. Are people untrustworthy until they prove themselves trustworthy to you? Or are they trustworthy until they prove themselves untrustworthy? If your trust has been broken before, then most likely you look at all other people as being untrustworthy. If you have no reason not to trust someone, then you probably live your glasses are rose-colored and the lemonade is spilling over your cup, and you are just full of life and happiness. Most of us have had someone disappoint us. Most of us have had someone break our trust. And when that has happened, that painful situation has incurred on all of us a scar that it's harder to trust another group of people. But I'm going to urge you and encourage you to have authentic community and to recognize that broken trust is a real deal. It's a barrier. But as we are discipling others and we are encouraging them to have authentic community, recognize, acknowledge, identify what is the barrier to the community being more authentic, attack that, fix it, heal it. Let there be healing. Negative words, or letter G, a lack of transparency is a barrier. Letter H, negative words we speak can form barriers. Let's get rid of these absolute statements like I will never do business with a Christian again. I will never go to church again. All the I will nevers. The word never and the word always are so unhealthy. She always treats me wrong. Not true. I'm talking about my daughters. She does not always treat you wrong. Sometimes she's done some really nice things to you, but most recently she's done a couple things that hurt your feelings. And that's a better perspective. Remember, church is not going to be perfect. However, it is worth giving it a shot to build authentic community. Letter I, our fundamental beliefs about ourselves, others, and God may lead to barriers in authentic community. We are trying to help you understand what your fundamental beliefs are. making sure that you have laid a firm foundation, understanding the Bible, then hopefully you would not have a barrier to having authentic community. Okay, so your beliefs are important. As a man thinks in his heart, so he is. We often focus on decisions and not beliefs, yet our decisions and behaviors are determined largely by beliefs. Wow. Largely by beliefs. Okay? Here we go, you guys, finishing up these notes for the day. What a good, authentic community. No more blanks for you. But beliefs are important. Yes, I said that already. Okay, number one, what are your beliefs about yourself? This is something that even though there's not a blank on your paper, I think you need to write in these notes. What are your beliefs? If you say that I am bad, I am unlovable, my need for others is not valid, you need to put a huge X through all those statements. Don't let any of those statements come out of your mouth. What are your beliefs about others? No one is untrustworthy. People will always leave me. People are going to disapprove of me. Please take your pen and cross all those out. Those are negative, wrong statements. Number three, what are your beliefs about God? He doesn't love me. He gets angry. He doesn't hear me. He doesn't answer my prayers. X those out. All of that negativity is going to hinder you from having a authentic community surrounding you. Instead, right now, let's do a little reworking of these statements that you just X'd out. And I want you to write 3 statements about what you believe about yourself. Reword those statements right there. I am lovable. Write that down. My need for others is totally valid. My feelings are not going to overwhelm anyone. What are your beliefs about others? People are kind. Write that down. People are not going to control me. I will be safe. People are not faking it. They truly do care about me. And number 3, write these statements down. Reverse what it was written and rewrite and say, God is not angry with me. He loves me. God will forgive me, and he has already done so. Reword these statements and allow yourself to have a true, fundamental, solid, positive outlook on what your authentic community can look like. Stop saying always and never. Get rid of those words out of your vocabulary. And then this last statement as we close this section of our notes. Building authentic community will require a lot of patience on everyone's part. The Bible tells us to be patient with those who are weaker, who are learning, who are just learning to walk. The true relational maturity is often seen in your ability to handle immaturity in others. Let's take the risk and make ourselves vulnerable. There is much love around, so do not hide from it. Don't hide from all the love that is around you guys. So much love can be found in the authentic community that we're building at City Church, that your small groups and your friends are reaching out to you. And here at San Diego Christian Leadership College, we want to build an authentic community. As I look through the screen at you and tell you I love you, I care about you, I want you to do well, I'm not faking it. I truly have no other motive but wanting you to know and to learn and to understand the Bible at a greater capacity so that you could have authentic relationship with Jesus and authentic community here in San Diego. Love you all, and I hope that this lesson impacts you and that you do something about it today. Reach out to those friends, reword your thinking about yourself, and let's be social architects. I love those 2 words together. Thanks, you guys.